Ho, 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 la 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 la, Merry Crimbo, and all of that jazz. Welcome back. I have been working hard on a new project to support you all with your psychology revision in the run up to that time of year. Now, my lot, you all have practice exams coming up in January. I'm sure lots of other people will be looking at this with mocks in mind, practice exams in mind. But even if you don't have practice exams coming up, even if you're year 12, there will be some usefulness to this. So, how this is going to work, if you stay with me every day, there will be, I'm going to try really hard to keep it up, but every day the plan is there will be some revision here for you to do. You come on and I'm sort of going to give you a chance to do some questions. You can pause the video and then I'll talk through, and yeah, I'll put a bit of a Christmas spin on it. I've got to. If I'm calling it Psychmas, if I'm talking about this as an advent calendar, I reckon what we'll do is I'll ask you a Christmas question. How about that? You can let me know what you think in the comments and then we'll do some revision. So here's your first question. What's your favourite part of Christmas dinner? What's your favourite part of Christmas dinner? I think for me, it would have to be, I think I'll go with the roast potatoes. I love a good roast potato. There you go. That's the Christmas box checked. Right. Revision time. Let's crack on. Okay. So, there are your 5 questions. You've got a bit of social influence, some clinical psychology, psychopathology. You've got some memory, you've got a little bit of approaches and a bit of research methods. So if you're year 12 and you haven't quite done all of those topics, you can still do some revision. But if you're year 13, hopefully you can have a good chance to crack on with those. So pause the video at this point. You can blurt, I've deliberately not sort of done marks for questions. You can just blurt what you know. You can pretend they're sort of 2, 3, 4 markers if you like and do it more formally. Depends how much time you've got, but take a few minutes, pause the video, give it a go, come back and I'll talk through some ideas. Okay, that was your chance. Hopefully you've had a good go at that. Right, so the dispositional explanation for resistance to social influence. Well, disposition, remember, means like it's your disposition, it's your personality, it's sort of like how you are, right? So the one that's named on the spec for this is your locus of control. Now, what you want to do here is you want to explain what we mean by locus of control. So that's our sort of belief about the extent to which we sort of have control in our lives, right? That we direct events in our lives. Now, what you want to do is emphasize that resistance is going to be those people that have an internal locus of control. They are more likely to be leaders. They seek information rather than just sort of passively follow other people. Yeah. So if you're internal, you're more likely to resist. Whereas if you're external, you're more likely to conform or obey. Yeah. Not resist. So if it says resistance, emphasize internal. Right, for a strength of the cognitive explanation for depression, probably the key strength, remember here it says the explanation of depression. So probably the key strength is its applications. You know about CBT and the fact that that's based on the idea of, disputing irrational beliefs and all of that sort of jazz. So why don't you make a strength paragraph out of the positive applications? And you could talk about how CBT is effective, how it, it's useful for people to sort of manage their own symptoms. You can talk about how it maybe helps get people back into work, reducing the burden on the NHS. It has that sort of positive economic implication in that way as well. Yeah. But I wouldn't go too far into what CBT is here because the focus is on the explanation. So what you want to do is just make sure you're linking it back to the explanation at the end. So, after you've done all of that, therefore, this demonstrates the positive applications of the cognitive explanation for depression. Or if your argument is that CBT works, link it back. This supports the idea that depression has a cognitive basis, because cognitive therapy works. If depression weren't cognitive, then cognitive therapy wouldn't work. Logically, anyway, that's a sensible conclusion. There are other things we could do, but it's not a discussion question. It's just explain the strength. All right, your explanations for forgetting. Now, if you see forgetting, you would be within your rights to sort of think, oh, is that sort of displacement? Is it decay? Is it stuff like that? And I'm sure, you'd get some credit for that. But really what they're expecting to see here, your 2 explanations on the spec are interference and retrieval failure. So retrieval failure, hopefully you're remembering, that breaks down into context-dependent forgetting and state-dependent forgetting. And it's all about those cues. So when we learn stuff, we also sort of encode cues that are present at that stage of learning with the memory. So when we come to remember it, if those cues are sort of there again, then they act as triggers. They jog our memory, right? And if those cues are internal, so things like, feelings, or it might be, biological states, like you might remember the antihistamine study by Carter and Cassidy, if you've done that one. Yeah, so, the presence of a drug, or you might have looked at, it could be alcohol. So, being drunk would be an internal cue, right? So if those cues are the same, learning and retrieval, then that helps recall. Yeah, they act as triggers. Could be context, it could be external cues, it could be the environment, it could be, posters in your classroom when you see that poster and maybe it jogs your memory of something, right? So you've got retrieval failure. And then you've got interference theory. Now, interference theory, remember, is where information or memories are sort of disrupting or blocking each other. Now, this occurs between similar kinds of information, right? And you hopefully remember you've got two types of interference. So if what am I trying to say? If an old memory, come on, Galbraith, wake up. If an old memory disrupts a new memory, yeah, the interference is going forward in time. So that's called proactive interference, pro meaning forward. And if you've got a newer memory, so something you've learned more recently, that is disrupting something that's older, something you learned a long time ago, that interference there is going back in time. So we call that retroactive interference. Retro, sort of think backwards, old, yeah? Okay, so you've got your two explanations there. Right, so we've got a bit of paper 2 next. So a similarity between the biological and the behaviourist approaches. There's probably a few things you could come up with here. You could take a more general view of sort of what is their stance on psychology. And you could talk about how both of them view psychology as a science. And you could maybe give some examples of, objective, sort of measurable, testable things that they do, right? Alternatively, you could focus more on your sort of issues and debates. If you've covered some of that by now, I know, my lot, you should be able to do this. And think about things like determinism and free will. So both of them reject the idea of free will. Remember that Skinner said that, free will is an illusion. So if they both reject free will, their similarity could also be worded as they're both hard determinists. There you go. Right, we want to name and outline 2 experimental designs for our research methods question. Okay. Now, be careful here because some people confuse the types and the designs. So the types are things like, your lab and your field and your quasi and your natural. Designs are how you actually sort of set up the groups for your study, right? So, there are 3 designs on the spec. So that is your repeated measures design, it's your independent groups or independent measures design, and it's your match pairs design. Yeah. So hopefully you picked 2 of those. Your repeated measures is where you've got the same group of participants that experience both levels of the IV. Yeah. So 2 groups of the same people. They do one task or one condition, and then they do the other one. And then you compare. Your independent measures or independent groups design is where you've got 2 separate groups of participants that each experience a different level of the IV. And you then compare. Match pairs, again, it's 2 separate groups, but the key thing here is what you're doing is you're sort of using some either pre-existing measure or something you might measure before the study, something like, I don't know, IQ, or it might be that they're matched on gender or age or, I don't know, memory span, language abilities, anything that you think is relevant to the study, right? And then what you do is you sort of imagine putting them all in a big sort of long line, sort of highest score to lowest score, and then you take the top 2, one of them goes into group 1, one of them goes into group 2, you take the next 2, one of them goes into group 1, one of them goes into group 2, and you keep doing that until you get to the end of the line. So when you're finished, you've got 2 groups that are, for all intents and purposes, the same on that variable that you chose to match them on. All right? Okay, there you go. That's your 5 a day. Right, do let me know what your, what did I ask you? What your favourite part of Christmas dinner is. Do let me know in the comments. Let me know how you got on if you like. Let me know if you've got any questions. I hope it was useful for you. Please do come back and carry on revising with me for the next couple of weeks. We're going to try and keep this up every day. Please also consider supporting the channel by liking and subscribing. Links in the description. There you go. I think that's it. Job done. Bish, bash, bosh. Have a great day, everybody. And hopefully I'm going to get a few of you coming with me on this journey. All right. Cheers, guys. See you next time.